Hey guys, Ray from Love You RV and Boat. So not very many videos lately. I've been super busy since we got back to Canada. Spent some time on Vancouver Island, visited my sister in Victoria. Then we went up to and stayed at Rath-Trevor Provincial Park and visited Anne's dad. Then we went up to Comox area, Courtney Comox, for 5 days. And we wanted to stay 5 days there to clean out a storage room that we had. Mainly Anne had a really old piano in there, and she finally decided she could part with it. So spent several days carting stuff to donations and recycling, and sold off some stuff, and finally we got rid of the piano so we can stop paying for that storage room, which cost us about $80 a month, and then took whatever we had left over to where our boat is, and we have a storage room as part of its storage package. And then once we got over here, we've been really busy getting the boat ready to launch. We figured we would have launched it a few days ago, but ran into some not great weather, lots of rain, and wanted to get the bottom painted. And once we pulled the bottom paint off, I didn't. That was one thing I draw the line. I'm not doing scraping and sanding and painting. I'll do all electrical, plumbing, and mechanical. I love that stuff. But so Anne hired a person to do the bottom paint, and once she got started scraping it off, we decided best thing we'd do is take it right down to the gel coat and put a really good sealing epoxy on it, and then a bottom paint, so that done once, done for a while. So, but that process has been pretty slow, and we need some good days for the painting and that. But that's given me time to work on mechanical stuff in the boat. I dewinterized it and everything, and she fired up, engine's working, put in a new raw water pump. I had a video on that. And I'll just go show you around what I've been puttering with and what Anne's been doing. We figure we've probably got another maybe a week or a week and a half before we can get it in the water. But in that time, we'll work on it on dry land where you can do things you can't do when you're in the water. So let's take a look. So kind of chaos in here where I'm working. I've been working on the engine. Down in there, there's 4 lead acid golf cart batteries. They're Trojans and they're only a few years old and in pretty good shape, so I'm just going to leave them as is. So I checked them out, checked the voltages. They survived the winter fine, topped up the water, didn't even need much. I had disconnected them for the winter. Had to go back and put the plumbing all back together. Got a water pump down there, a holding tank, and then up here is a macerator pump, and we got 2 toilets. So I had disconnected everything and ran antifreeze into the line, RV antifreeze. So I had to pump that out and connect everything back up, and it seems to be working. A little water heater here. Also I had disconnected and drained that. This particular water heater can run off the engine coolant, so you can either have electric power when you're on shore power, or when the motor or the engine is running, it pumps hot coolant through there, and there's an exchanger, so you have hot water when you end up at your location. Got some bilges, so I cleaned and tested the bilge pumps. That's the kind of shower bilge, or any water leaks into the boat, it goes into that bilge. And then there's an engine bilge down there that I tested out. That's all working fine. And like I say, down below there's the new raw water pump. I've been kind of messing with the hosing there, trying to find some connections for the input hose. I really didn't like the elbow, but I found some plastic connectors and was able to, with a short piece of 1 inch, be able to mate it with the 1 1/4 inch hose. So I think that's going to be okay. Before it was put away for the winter, the oil thing was changed and new oil was put in it. Back in there's a little transmission they kind of call the gearbox. It's a Paragon, and I'm going to have to drain the transmission fluid and put new fluid in. I think you do it every 200 hours. I got from Amazon a little electric pump for that job, so that I can hook up some connections down there and just pump the old oil out, make it easy on myself. Also, it's hard to see. I'm going to do more detail on these jobs, just kind of doing an overview for you. But back there's a heat exchanger, and there was a pair of zincs that had to be replaced. And I pulled apart the heat exchanger and the hosing from the oil cooler, transmission oil cooler, cleaned out any corrosion, inspected it, all looked really good. So pretty happy with the engine. I hope we're going to be okay. And that's about it. I still have to run it up, do some I've powered it up a few times, but once we get it back on a dock, I can run it up to temperature, make sure everything's okay. And speaking of temperature, I had a problem where the gauges, we have a helm gauge and a fly bridge gauge for the water temperature, and it would always read about 120 degrees. So they are located down in here. There's one of the senders for the temperature, and there's another sender for overheating alarm. So I had to pull this piece off, and underneath there's a thermostat. So I pulled it off and cleaned everything and replaced that thermostat. And I pulled the senders out, and it looks like the sender is I think it's AC Delco for like an old 60s Corvette or something like that. So I'm kind of doing some research on the senders because it's a different sort of a particular size, and also they have senders for single gauges or dual gauges. So I'm almost thinking someone stuck in a car sender meant for a single gauge, and because we're hooked up to 2 gauges, that's why it's reading low. So once we get back in the water and I can run it up to a temperature, I can disconnect one of the gauges and see if the sender is okay. It's just because it's a dual gauge system, and either I can find the right sender or I could put a switch to switch off each one or the other gauge that we're not using at the time. Tested out the propane too, checked my stove and oven, and we have a little propane heater, and pressure tested the system. Everything seems fine. It was a pretty updated system. There's some tanks up outside that feed down in here and run the stove and the heater. And then that brings us to electrical. Check the fridge. Fridge has been running fine. I think it's a NovaCool fridge. It's a little 12-volt fridge, works really well. And then I have another freeze. I use that as a freezer. It's a portable 12-volt. And I usually will stick that down back in the engine compartment there. It's kind of our deep freeze, so we can keep extra food. And of course, I had to check all the electrical connections. Everything was pretty good. All the DC connections are working fine. But I've been puttering down here, kind of updating the electrical. I had last year I had installed a Xantrex. We bought a 2,000 watt Xantrex inverter charger transfer switch, and that worked out really good. And then if you watched my RVing videos in the fall, I took these 2 big Xantrex down south with me, and they worked great. So I brought them out of the RV, and I'm going to mate them with that Xantrex. So we'll have 480 watts of lithium and a 2,000 watt charger. And then to run the solar, I've installed an SRNE 50 amp controller. I also have an SRNE DC to DC charger. It's a 30 amp DC to DC charger. And what I'm going to use that for is if I want to put any lit power out of the alternator or that lead acid bank, I can use that to safely charge the lithium batteries, and then that won't hurt the alternator or anything like that. And then I'm going to put one more charger, because this year I'm going to have 400 watts of solar on the bimini top, and another 400 is going to be just off the side rails. Both of them are panels that are folding panels. Some of the panels roll up and some are folding. Just let me show you that. Go outside. Here's our boatyard. And then we're also increasing our anchor chain. So you can see here, I took this apart and serviced this at Maxwell windlass, took it apart, lubed it up and everything and checked it. And this rope's just waiting for some new anchor. As you can see the anchor in the back of the truck there. So we have, I think, 20 meters of chain. We're going to add 10 more meters of chain. And then we're going to put a new connection between the rope and the chain. Let's just go up to the fly bridge. Also got the dinghy motor ready. dewinterized it, cleaned it up, and then inflated the dinghy, so it should be good. And then we'll go up here. So last year, if you watched, I had one of these Bouge RV SIGS panels that are super thin and they can roll up really tight. I can roll it up and store it away when we're under travel. And so I got them to send me another one. They were asking me if I wanted to review anything else. They said, send me another one and I'll review both of them. So we'll have 400 watts up on the bimini. I usually just bungee it up there and it connects through some connections and down into my solar charger. And then the boat came with two 100 watt panels. They kind of keep the lead acid trickle charging. And then if you watched last month, I started to test out a Renogy 400 watt folding panel. And I was wondering, where am I going to put that on the boat? So I've created this platform over here. These are kind of kayak holders. We don't have kayaks, so I repurposed them where I can add this piece of piping there. And then I got some foam that I can bungee on the rail, and then I can lay a 400 watt panel right there. And it will sit outside of the boat, so it won't get as less shading as possible. And also we'll be able to walk around and everything, so we won't have panels hanging around. Anne likes to have the look of the boat be pretty streamlined without a lot of panels hanging around everywhere. We also can take these panels and if we're anchored in such a way that we're not moving around, I put them along the brow on the front there, the head of the boat sometimes. So it gives me lots of options. We'll go down and see what Anne's up to and give you a look at how the bottom paint's coming along. You see it's getting right back down to the gel coat. We'll be able to fix any problems with the gel coat in there. Also going to get the prop and the rudder all done. Check all the zincs. And then here's Anne. She's starting on the rails. That's her job. Make sure the brightwork is really pretty.
Trying to. Coming off pretty good.
Good. You can see how it looks here. It's all black like this. That needed to be all scraped off. And then you get down to here. And the weird patterns, we figured at one point this boat sat and a bunch of sea life grew on it. It's got kind of these weird marks, like looks like marine life was attached to it somewhere in its history. So one half is done and the other half is being sanded off. So at our storage area we have water and a 30 amp service. And we get a nice little storage room. So we left this all winter and I just put one of these little heaters in there. They only put out, 120 watts. I think these ones put out maybe 200. These two were left on the boat in the forward cabin and the rear cabin. And then this one I left in here, and everything is bone dry in both things. So really like that. We have lots of room in here to store all our boat stuff in here, the life jackets and everything are getting ready. And then I got a little toolbox tool bench. This is the previous owners built all this, or the people who had rented this space before, so it came with a nice bench and everything and shelves, so it worked out really good for us. Even the lighting was here. Well, there you go. That's the update for now. Stay tuned. Once we get this all in ship shape and splashed in and on our way, we'll come back with some travel videos of our adventures boating along the British Columbia coast. Till next time, Ray from Lovey RV and Boat. Cheers, guys.